So we were talking about how we can talk ourselves into things or out of things that we may or may not want to do, or that we may know that are not necessarily right for us. And there's a name for that that I bring out every once in a while, which is our gremlin, our negative inner critic. So we were talking, and you were saying, I'm talking myself into something here
Yeah,
that may or may not be right for me, or something like that.
yeah, yeah. When you use the word gremlin and you talk about a negative inner critic, I'm reminded of some friends that I have who literally hear critical voices in their head. And I'm not in their head, and so I can't assume that I know what those voices are like. But the impression I get from what they say is that they are a critical parent or teacher telling the person that their idea is stupid, that they are getting above themselves for having such thoughts, that they are not worthy of consequent actions, and the whole thing undermines their confidence and causes them to turn down opportunities that were, laid in their path.
Mm.
Now, I don't have that. I'm most fortunate in that I've never had that. And I thank my genetics or whatever it is that has brought me to that position. However, I do have mechanisms in my mind that can cause a choice of actions, whether to take an opportunity or to decline it, whether to take a course of action that I might have planned in the first place or
Mm.
not. And I was just thinking that the part of my mind that is influencing that choice and could be playing the part of a gremlin in that moment is a part of my mind that might otherwise be completely benign and most helpful.
Oh, okay.
So the point that I'm making is that the decisions we come to, the choices we make, could be influenced by what you describe as gremlin, could also be influenced and described by aspects of your personality and experience and emotional inclination. But those choices could fall into the category of gremlin activity that you're describing.
Mm.
So to go back to the example you're referring to, I have been invited to attend a gala performance of a film this evening in a big, very big parish church. It's the church where John Newton used to preach in Olney.
Mm.
And they're screening a film of a classical concert that was composed and the oratorio written specifically for the 250th anniversary of the writing of Amazing Grace, which was a parallel project to one I wrote. So, there's lots of reasons why I should be there. But there is part of my introverted self, and this is a part of myself that I've only recently come to terms with. In case viewers can't see my introverted self. It's about 8 feet tall. It looks like Chewbacca out of Star Wars. Occasionally green as well as brown. It's friendly, but quite influential because it's so big and strong. And, I lived most of my life completely unaware of this thing.
Mm. Well, most
And
people are
yeah,
unaware.
well, and I only became aware of it as a result of doing morning pages for 6 months. And you suddenly find that your writing is exposing this outline that you didn't know was there.
Mm.
Anyway, that part of me, which is a perfectly good part of me, this is not an evil gremlin. This is a lovely part of me, and it's where a lot of creativity comes from. It's where a lot of kindness and reflection lives, a lot of empathy.
Mm.
But this creature, it does feel like, I mean, it is part of me, but it feels like a self-determining creature.
But it is actually a creature. It's not exactly a part of you. You can um, make it into a separate entity. Like
Well,
you,
I don't want to risk it walking off. I quite like it. I'm quite happy for it to stay around. And
yeah.
as I say, very often it's bigger than I am. So, but that part of me is casting a little bit of a shadow over my choice of whether to go to this film or not. It's influencing. Now, part of me, the extrovert part of me, the project building, relationship building part of me, the planner, the execution, the chap that stands on a soapbox and addresses the crowd, that part of me wants to go to this film tonight and to smile and glad hand and, build fantastic plans with these people that will result in another project like the one I did with them in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And we have the seeds of that, so there's every reason to go. And the introvert is saying, well, I don't know, it's a long way, it's dark, perhaps it would be easier to talk to these people on a one-to-one basis rather than in the middle of a big event. So what I'm saying is that two perfectly normal and good parts of myself
Mm.
are discussing the matter. I don't think discussing is the right word.
But did you
They
say
are,
something earlier in a slightly different? You were saying about coming to terms with your age and where you might have been more inclined in your younger days to go, even though you have introverted tendencies. You now um, take more of an effort to go out, and you'd rather stay home.
well, the as you age, you change. I'm convinced that there is a huge change between you at the age of 40 and you at the age of 70,
Yeah.
and in between those two there is a a long transformation. So firstly, you have to go with the flow. You cannot resist it, or if you do resist it, you come up against all sorts of conflict and you can make a bit of a fool of yourself, especially in your own eyes. So you have to start listening. You have to start paying attention. And that's how I became aware of my friend, the introvert. And I was saying earlier on that I am quite looking forward to making the adjustments in my life so that that third age can be stable
Mm.
in terms of finances and all the rest of it, which they're not at the moment. And that I would anticipate that that third age is a more reflective period. And I'll give you one example of where that's happening in my life. Perhaps two examples. The project that I'm referring to that could be seen as germane to this film tonight was based on the life of John Newton, the guy who wrote Amazing Grace.
Mm.
And so I'm dipping a toe back into Christianity and spirituality and religion, which I left aged 25.
Yeah.
Furthermore, I'm a poet, and one of the things that poets need is a theme or a subject to write about. And I recently engaged with my friend, another poet, in a writing program, a project, and I chose the subject of the Gospel of St. John.
Mm.
Now, I could have chosen anything. I could have chosen the Beatles, which you can see here. I could have chosen anything. But there was something that drew me to a kind of meditation, an opportunity to meditate. You know, so there is something in my... So maybe if the gremlin is the dark angel on one shoulder, maybe there is a good angel on the other shoulder that is subconsciously prompting you to go in the direction that you will find fruitful in your later years.
I call it your inner champion.
There you go. There you go. So I think that my inner champion is at work, and although it is toiling away somewhere in a subconscious cave, it sometimes breaks through and nudges me into positive directions. And I think that an old age reflecting on spirituality and letting go of some of the physical possessions, you know, so long as I have some kind of security, I'd be quite happy with that.
And have you decided what to do this evening?
No, not yet. No, I have the ability to put that off until 5 minutes before I need to leave. So I don't know. I don't know.
The thing with
One thing I promise, one thing I can tell you is that I will maintain the relationships. The reason that I've been invited is that I have relationships with other people who will be there tonight. And even if I don't attend on this occasion, I will maintain and develop still further those relationships throughout the autumn.
Okay.
So
it's not a huge loss.
No. I mean, I really, again, I think it's part of a growing self-awareness, which kind of happens post 60, I think, or at least maybe you just become aware of who you're becoming. This idea that your friends are not the same friends that you had when you were 40. I mean, you may have some, and lifelong friends are wonderful, but there is a turnover, because the person you're becoming post 60 is a different person. So why would you have the same friends, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the only person, not even you, and we go back over 20 years,
Yeah.
have known me when I was 40.
Right.
I was 54, something like that, when we first met, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you haven't changed a bit.
Yeah, I definitely don't have those. And that is because the people that I knew when I was in my first marriage were as just as superficial as my marriage was.
Mm.
And so when I left, I recreated my life, my relationships since
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
So yeah, so but very few people, I would imagine, have such a dramatic cutting off of a previous life and starting
Well,
off a new one.
I'm not sure that's true. I think that there are lots of things that happen in life that force people into that
Yes,
dramatic borderline experience. It might be kids leaving home. It might be the retirement of either yourself or your spouse.
mm,
There are lots of social crossing points
yes,
that force you or push you or suggest that you are changing, that you are going, and there's the physicality. I mean, we've often talked about the ways our bodies are changing as we age. That happens at least from 60.
yeah,
And so you are constantly reminded that you are changing.
yeah, mm,
I mean, there are there are quiet ways of that happening, and there are some quite public and humiliating ways of that happening. You know, you assume that you can do something that you could do when you were 40, and then you try doing it and it doesn't happen, and you feel embarrassed,
yeah,
or at least shocked.
yeah,
Yeah, shocked.
because
So
it was unexpected.
yeah, I mean, because your mind hasn't had to encounter. I mean, if there was a gap between 40 and 60, your mind hasn't had to process that change.
Mm,
And suddenly you come up against it, and whoa, you know. So this is why men buy red sports cars and date their secretaries, you
yeah,
know.
it's it usually most, well, not mostly. I was going to say mostly physical, but that's not necessarily true. I've met people who used to be physically active, trekking, hill climbing, and suddenly they can't do it anymore, and they mourn the loss.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. And that's a very healthy response. What would be worrying is if they didn't mourn. I mean, the grieving process has to be there.
say more about that.
Well,
Why?
well, I think. I mean, I haven't encountered much grief from losing people out of my life, but I have had quite a lot of internal grief that I've lost aspects of myself, and unacknowledged grief can come out in some dangerous ways: overeating, alcoholism, serial adultery, gambling, lethargy, um, antisocial behaviour. I mean, all sorts of negative things
Mm.
can be the sublimation, or at least the symptoms of unattended grief.
But in your case, and also in the context of age and grief, when you um, before your hip replacement, you were in excruciating pain. Was that due partly with age at the time?
I don't think my hip was psychosomatic. I don't think it was emotional. I think it was purely physical.
Yeah, but was
But
it
there
age
are,
related?
oh, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
because the point I wanted, did you grieve for the loss of yourself?
No, I
When,
was angry. It was anger.
right.
I was frustrated and angry.
Yeah, because now you're that you had your hips replaced, it's a new lease of life, and you're older.
It is, and I do think that the third age can be a vital, dynamic, rich period, but
Yes.
it will be different. I mean, I God bless those 90-year-olds who go climbing mountains. That's wonderful. That's great, but that's not for me. I mean, but please go ahead and do that. I just think that it's the wise person that notices that they change and that looks for a new home, looks for a new
That's the point.
pathway, whatever you want
Mm,
to call it, a new self, even.
yeah.
And
So
there will be an inheritance from the old self. There will be a familial connection, but it will be different. And I think that as you become more aware of who you're becoming, you you might become you might be able to draw the map a little bit better than you did when you were 25. I mean, 25-year-olds are not very good cartographers, but 60-year-olds are because they've got all of this experience. Oh, I know what a mountain looks like.
mm,
So you can start to plot a map of where you've been recently, where you are, and where you might be going.
mm,
And that gives you the courage to look even further ahead and to say, well, if I have some influence over where I'm going in the next couple of years, maybe I can have a bit of influence over where I go in the next 10 years,
mm.
God willing. And you start to think in those terms where perhaps previously you were more reactive and spontaneous.
My mountains are more mental and emotional.
Okay.
And they once said, I love climbing.
Okay.
And one of the funny things about that is that I just posted, or I will on Friday, a new post about staying forever young.
All right.
And uh, and for me, it means a number of things, but mostly staying curious and
Oh,
continuing
absolutely.
continuing to learn new things.
I think that's vital, and I think that I would challenge your linking that to staying forever young. I think curiosity, well, in my life, curiosity has actually grown the older I've got.
Yes, me too. How
So,
interesting.
well, that's the perfect phrase, isn't it? How interesting. It applies to everything.
Well, because so many people from 60 or even younger slow down, especially after retirement.
Well, if that means that they've lost their curiosity, then that's very sad.
Um,
I mean, if the height of their curiosity is, I wonder what's on telly this evening, then that would be a bit of a disappointment.
yes, it would be. Yes. Um,
But for a lot of people, it's not that. For a lot of people, they get involved in political issues like climate crisis. They get
mm,
involved in social issues like food banks. You know, retirement for a lot of people is a time of new engagements, new curiosities, and that brings them in touch with new people, and they are cast in a new light by the response of those new people. Those new people tell them who they are now, and there's a range of um, archetypes. My grandchildren call me Grandolph. You know, I should carry a staff and make proclamations. Um, so there is, you know, becoming old is not a negated life. It's not something that's over. There are archetypes that you can move into, and you know, I watch my fair share of television, but if that is the height of your existence, then that's an archetype you've chosen. I mean, we all make choices.
What do you mean by archetype?
Um, well, it's this kind of iconic role model. I mean, Jung listed lots of archetypes, and some of those are old and wise, and you can adopt those. But culture, myths, legends, fairy stories, and even history gives you a choice of older people to not to model yourself on, but to take inspiration from.
um, there is a saying about older people, women, the wise one or the old crone,
Yeah, I got into a lot of. I get into
which
you have to.
I can't. Wise, yes. Old crone, no.
Well, no. Crone has a long history and is a much more nuanced phrase and carries much more cultural weight than the kind of washed up shell that it infers in today's parlance. Um, and as a man, those words come out of my mouth and are received differently to if a woman. So, for example, if you were amongst your women friends and you used the word crone, I'm I assume that they would understand that in the
Mm,
way of a wise woman who has a knowledge of natural remedies and wisdom and
mm.
perhaps lives separate from the village. Whereas if I said it, everybody would automatically assume it's an insult. So the archetypes that I'm talking about will mean different things to different people. And the important measure is the extent to which it rings with you.
Right.
So you might get clues from culture. So, for example, Shakespeare looked at old men. So you get Lear
Mm,
being shunned by his daughters and going mad on the heath, and you get Prospero um, on an island, and his conversations and awareness drift between real creatures and either imagined creatures or supernatural creatures, and eventually he breaks his staff. Now, most people think that that is Shakespeare departing the theatre.
mm.
He's giving up on his playwriting and going back to Anne and the family. And maybe that is something about this transition from 40 to 60 to 80, you know, the transformation from one life to the next. That was Shakespeare retiring. So you can find your way. There are these monuments in the landscape,
Yeah.
and Obi-Wan in Star Wars, the kind of wise figure who is part spirit, part real, appears when you need him with a wise word. You know, that is a part of storytelling. So when you
Hmm.
stopped being the sword waving hero, you can become the wise Jedi or Gandalf, or there are lots and lots of Odin. I mean, in the Thor family, Thor and Loki's dad is Odin, and it's Anthony Hopkins sitting on a throne with one eye. So there's lots of cultural, I mean, and we know these things. This is not foreign. This is stuff we know. Everybody has their own chess set of icons and archetypes,
Hmm.
and part of the skill in navigating your life is knowing when to move from one to the next, and building your own version. I mean, I'm not Gandalf. I don't ride around on a horse. Shadowfax. I've got a car. So, but I can be aware that I'm no longer Frodo and Sam. I am more, and I'm seen as Gandalf by other people.
I mean, now that you mention it, I have seen yours evolve over the time
Yeah,
we've known each other.
yeah, yeah. And you have to be open to that. You can't resist it. You can't fight it. You have to be friends with it. And you might say to me, how do I become aware of that? What is the flashlight that I use to illuminate the path in front of me? And there are lots of different ways. I mean, coaching is a great way because you get to talk to somebody and they get to reflect back where you are today and what you are thinking today.
Mm.
So, hands up for coaching. It's a terrific tool. But also, there are other things that I use morning pages, and that is a technique of writing 3 sides of A4 in a complete flow of consciousness. You put anything down there and you do it every day. Now, I did that for a period and I found that there was stuff coming out that caused me to think about things that I had taken for granted. That family relation, this the sort of stuff that everybody would end up talking about if they kept talking long enough.
Mm.
And it just causes you to understand where you are today because it's coming out. It's pretty unconscious. It's rough and ready, and it's kind of
It's
how did I
interesting you should say that
how did
because
I end up here when I started over there? And is it any wonder that the things I'm experiencing today are as a result of the parents I had, for example? I'm not
no,
blaming.
no, no, because that's what I was thinking about, my
Yeah,
parents.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
very
interestingly, Dave and I, we talk about our parents and
yes,
how we are in relation to how they were.
yes,
And that is absolutely fascinating to look back and see how have I become the person I am today from who they were.
absolutely, absolutely. I think it is one of the most important conversations we can have with ourselves, and it will be different at 25, 40,
Oh God,
60,
yes.
70.
Mm.
And it's a compass. It's a way in which we can you see. I mean, the parents don't change, or at least maybe our attitude towards them does, or our understanding of them does. But it is a way of measuring where we stand.
Mm. Yeah, but it's
I
not always so easy. I have a client who is at odds with her mother, and she is 52, and she told her mother once, "Well, my friends love me," and the mother said, "That's because they don't know you."
yeah,
And believe it or well, you will believe it that it sticks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It sticks more stingingly
Yes.
than and another. I come from a family just like anybody else. I have both my parents, despite the fact that I'm 67, both my parents are still alive, and I have a brother and a sister, and the comments that they've made over the years between them resonate through my mind all the time.
Mm.
And if anything, you might, I mean, there might be a conversation we could have that says, to what extent are those comments the food of your inner gremlin or the
Oh
tools
no,
of,
they are absolutely.
yeah. So I think that, and it may be, I would go one step further and I would say that it may be that those comments are themselves gremlins.
Yes, they are. They are. I had by the end, just about 40 minutes into my coaching session, I um I said to her that what did I say to her? Yes, and I I think you are XXXX courageous, honest, high integrity. You can tell from the conversation. And I said to her, and that's because I see you and I know who you are. So I used a mother's voice, but in the positive way. The inner self is not because you are flawed, like the mother implied, but because she's beautiful, strong, courageous, persistent, curious, and it takes courage to want to be coached.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. Everything that I've talked about takes courage, absolutely, and that's why some people don't do it.
Yes, I can understand that. Yeah. And some people like me are gluttons for punishment.
Yeah. Well, there is that. There is that. I do think that there is a masochistic personality, or at least aspect, that would rather listen to the criticism than the affirmation.
Yeah,
And it may be that that was formed in childhood. It may be that defeat is more comforting, or it's a safer space than having to face.
it's all they know. It's all they know.
Isn't that terrible?
Yes. Yeah.
But, we are all the product of our collective experience. So,
But we can choose. This is the thing that I believe. We can choose. We don't have to stay in this terrible place.
yes, that's right.
Well, you and
Yes,
I are perfect examples.
yes, yes. I'm not sure I'm perfect anything, but yes, I'll take your
No,
point.
but perfect examples. Not perfect, perfect examples. Yeah.
Yes, so it takes insight, which you can either generate for yourself or receive from somebody else. It takes courage, which either you can generate for yourself or receive from somebody else.
Mm,
That leads on to knowledge, which you can either generate for yourself or receive from somebody else.
absolutely. And we
But
all
that,
can use a helping hand.
absolutely, well, I think it's necessary. I mean, even if you are discovering things for yourself, I think it's probably necessary to go and have conversations like this so that you can pattern those things,
Mm,
articulate those things, share them, have some kind of affirmation or recognition, and also share that with somebody else. I think that the human spirit is a social creation, and the act of sharing builds your strength.
mm,
So if you have gone to somebody and said, look at all these jigsaw pieces that I've recently discovered in my soul. What do you think? And the friend has said, yes, you're beautiful, courageous, and wonderful. The act of sharing strengthens your perception of your new self. So, you know, that is part of the process, isn't it?
Mm,
That sharing.
yes, yes. But
And
having somebody to share that you trust, where you can actually share.
well, this is another thing about going into old age. You know, when you're 30 or 40, you very often you're employed by somebody because you're having to earn money to support a family and a mortgage. And you end up working with a bunch of people who you don't know, you wouldn't have chosen. They're just strangers thrust into an office. But they become your friends through repetition.
Yes,
And they're not particularly edifying to your soul. But and I think what happens as you get older, you begin to think, oh, I am so finished with that. I want people who I trust.
mm,
I mean, trust is so rare, so rare.
yes, absolutely.
And yet, when you come down to it, it's one of the things that the human soul hankers for more than almost anything else. And I think when you get to 60 or some age like that, you begin to think to yourself, oh, right, I am sick of, you know, my mother telling me horrible things or whatever other gremlins have been going on in your outer life.
Yeah,
I want some people, not people who are going to compliment me. I don't want that. I want people who are going to tell me the truth because I want to
yes,
trust them.
yes,
I want, and that I can look into my life and see that that has happened. So, and some of those people are survivors of a previous age. You know, I those people I still see, and I am possibly a little more candid with them. I tell them about my new self, and am pleasantly surprised to say that they've known him all along, perhaps even ahead of me knowing him,
yes,
which is interesting. But you do make a bunch of new friends, and there's something about the fact that you are discovering your new self and making that discovery with a mature honesty
yeah.
that means that when you make new friends, they respond to that honesty.
And
And they,
you are the one who has to take the initiative.
yes, and the first initiative is to be honest within yourself,
Exactly.
and that will translate to honest and trusting relationships externally. And it can be a golden age, it can be your great age, it can be the best part of your life.
Mm,
I mean, I know not only myself, but other people in my life, and you know that they are lost age 20, but you know that they were born to be 70.
they were born to be,
70.
oh,
Some people have a spirit, a soul, that needs an older body, needs a wisdom. I mean, if they were born as the wise old man, I mean, I wasn't. I wasn't born as a wise old man, but there are some who were.
interesting.
You know, the wise
Yes,
woman. I know several women in my life who have been unanchored in their youth because they were wise women from the start and they just hadn't reconciled that to themselves.
Mm.
But you can see them gradually. It's like moving into a house. You know, the moving van has pulled up and they're moving tea chests, and gradually, year on year, the house is filling up, and suddenly they emerge as this wise woman, and you think, ah, there you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a wonderful thing. And sometimes it's a very difficult journey. I have a friend who I'm going to see this weekend who has survived very serious breast cancer. She's been fighting it for a year, 18 months. She's
Mm.
under medication but in remission. And she is now acting. She's on stage
Huh?
acting, which is something she did when she was 20 and then stopped.
Mm.
Um, and you just think you have moved into this new part of yourself and everybody can see it.
It's really interesting. Often Dave and I he will ask me, how did I get to have the kind of wisdom or insights or a way of looking at things that he goes, oh, wow, and I say, I don't know.
No,
I don't know how I got from there to here,
no.
but I'm glad I did.
Well, yeah, yeah. I'm glad you did too.
And the other interesting thing, when we first met, we would go, why did we have to wait so long before we meet? And the answer that came to me eventually was because it wasn't time until now. Now is the time. If we had
Well,
met a few years earlier, we would not have liked each other.
no, no. Well, this whole conversation has been predicated on the fact that we are not static,
No,
that we are in constant flux and develop. And that was something I was not told when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was suggested to me that we were fixed.
yes,
And that's caused me all sorts of trouble, not really understanding what that was. Um, but I can understand that you and Dave have met at a time when you were capable of seeing each other.
mm.
And it's a beautiful thing.
Earlier on, you were talking about um, sharing your innermost self with people you trust.
Yeah,
Um, but it's important to know that trust takes time to evolve.
absolutely. And part of the building of that trust, I mean, it's catch-22. Part of the building of the trust comes from the sharing of your inner self. So,
But there is such a thing as too much too soon.
yeah, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. But equally, if you don't do it at all, you don't get to the level of relationship where trust
No.
is an important factor. So you have to, in all relationships, you have to give a little of yourself,
Oh
and
God, yes. You
it
can't
can be
otherwise. Yeah,
well,
I'm
and
with you.
and and
Mm,
that will inevitably include um, insights into your developing self.
yeah.
You know, I've just taken up basket weaving.
I think this is a good moment to stop.
What
But
did I say? Basket weaving.
yes, I'll stop recording. But
Okay.
it was insightful. Thank you.
What are you going to do with it?